quiet twilight of his village, Jalen stood on the edge of the forest. The air was thick with mystery, as though the trees themselves were waiting for him to take the first step. His heart raced, but his mind was calm. He could feel the weight of destiny pulling him toward the unknown. As Jalen ventured deeper into the woods, the sky above seemed to shift. Stars flickered brighter than usual, and a strange pull tugged at his chest. Something within him stirred, an ancient force, a forgotten power waiting to awaken. The path led him to a clearing where a great bear stood, its fur shimmering with stardust, eyes glowing with an ancient wisdom. The creature's presence was both comforting and overwhelming, as if the stars themselves had taken form. "I am the guardian of the celestial path, young one. You have been chosen, Jalen, to carry the crystal heart back to the mountains. The darkness has grown, and only your light can save this world." With a deep breath, Jalen accepted his fate. The Starbear's form began to shift and dissolve, leaving behind a path of stardust that illuminated the forest floor. The way forward was clear, though the journey would not be easy. As Jalen ventured further, the village elder's warnings echoed in his mind. The path ahead was fraught with danger. The Shadow King's minions would stop at nothing to prevent him from reaching the Crystal Heart. The trees darkened as Jalen walked, their shadows creeping along the forest floor like ominous hands. He could feel eyes watching him from the depths of the woods, but he pressed on, knowing there was no turning back. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath him. A massive boulder blocked his path, its surface etched with ancient symbols. A riddle appeared in the air, floating like smoke. "I am not alive, yet I grow. I do not have lungs, yet I breathe. What am I?" Jalen thought for a moment, then whispered, "Fire." The boulder trembled, and with a loud rumble, it split in half, revealing the path forward. The forest was testing him, but he was not easily deterred. Ahead, a river lay before him, its waters churning with dark energy. From the depths, a soft voice called to him, offering a challenge. "Only those with pure hearts may pass. Answer me this: what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?" Jalen thought quickly, recalling the words of an ancient tale. "Man," he answered, "for he crawls as a baby, walks in his youth, and uses a cane in old age." The waters calmed, and a bridge of stones appeared, allowing him to cross. On the other side, the forest grew denser, the air thick with ancient magic. A hidden path emerged, twisting through the trees. Jalen knew this was the true test, and the Starbear's guidance would be his only compass. Suddenly, a small glowing creature appeared at Jalen's side. It was no larger than a bird, with wings like fireflies, its body shimmering with golden light. It chirped a song that seemed to speak directly to Jalen's heart. The path led them to an enchanted grove, where the trees whispered in a language older than time itself. The air buzzed with magic, and the very earth beneath their feet seemed alive, humming with energy. From the shadows, an enormous ancient turtle emerged. Its shell was covered in glowing runes, each one telling a story of ancient times. The creature spoke in a deep, resonating voice. "The path forward is dangerous. Do you truly wish to continue, young one?" The turtle explained that to continue, Jalen must pass the test of patience. He would need to meditate under the ancient tree, waiting until the right moment to proceed. Time itself seemed to slow as he sat in silence, feeling the forest's wisdom flow through him. After what felt like an eternity, the turtle nodded slowly. "You have passed," it said, its voice deep with approval. The path ahead revealed itself, glowing brightly in the night. But even as the path opened, a darkness loomed on the horizon. Dark clouds gathered, and the winds began to howl. Jalen could feel the presence of the Shadow King's minions closing in. As Jalen stepped forward, the dark clouds thickened, casting an ominous shadow across the path. The air turned cold, and he could feel the oppressive presence of the Shadow King's minions lurking nearby, their eyes watching him from the dark. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, their faces twisted in malice. The minions of the Shadow King had arrived. Jalen braced himself, feeling the weight of his destiny on his shoulders. The battle raged fiercely as Jalen fought off the first wave of shadow creatures. His sword clashed against the dark forces, each strike carrying the weight of his ancestors' power. He could feel the magic in the air crackle as he fought for his life. Just as Jalen began to tire, a soft radiant light filled the air. The spirits of his ancestors appeared, their ethereal forms glowing with ancient power. They whispered in a language long forgotten, guiding him to strike true. From the heart of the storm, the Shadow King appeared. His eyes burned with fury, and his voice echoed through the heavens. "You think you can defeat me, mortal? You are nothing compared to the darkness I control." The Shadow King raised his hand, and the earth trembled beneath them. Dark energy surged toward Jalen, but with a deep breath, he focused his energy, remembering the teachings of the Starbear and his ancestors. It was time for the final strike. As Jalen swung his sword with all his might, the ground beneath him split open, revealing the crystal heart. It pulsed with radiant energy, and the moment he touched it, a wave of light erupted, banishing the Shadow King's darkness. The Shadow King shrieked in agony as the light overwhelmed him, his form disintegrating into nothingness. The forces of darkness that had plagued the world began to fade, leaving only the soft glow of peace behind. The sky cleared, the clouds parting to reveal the dawn. The stars above shone brighter than ever before. The world, once cloaked in darkness, was now bathed in light, and Jalen knew his journey had only just begun. The Starbear appeared once more, its shimmering form stepping out from the edge of the forest. It nodded in approval, a deep rumble of pride resonating in its chest. Though the battle had been won, the journey was far from over. The Crystal Heart had saved the world, but its power was now linked to Jalen. The weight of its responsibility settled on his shoulders as he looked to the horizon, where more trials awaited. The road ahead was long, but Jalen was no longer the uncertain young man who had left his village. He had grown, had been shaped by the trials of his journey. And now, the future was his to shape. Jalen reached the ancient temple of the Guardians, where all the protectors of the realms had gathered. It was here that he would learn the true extent of his power and the balance he must maintain. The Guardians spoke in unison, their voices like a chorus of winds. They set before him a test, to confront his deepest fears and prove that he had the strength to lead the world into an age of light. Jalen closed his eyes and the world around him began to shift. His greatest fears manifested before him: failure, loss, and the return of the darkness. But he stood tall, refusing to back down. The Guardians watched in silence as Jalen confronted his fears. With a surge of power, the crystal heart in his hand blazed with light, revealing the true extent of his abilities. He was no longer just a boy. He was the new guardian of the realms. The Guardians bowed before Jalen, recognizing him as their equal. Together, they formed the Celestial Alliance, a group bound to protect the realms from the encroaching darkness. The balance of the world was in their hands. Though the world was at peace, the shadows never truly vanished. From the edges of the known world, a new threat emerged, one even darker than before. Jalen and the Guardians prepared for what was to come. As the storm clouds gathered, so too did the forces of darkness. Jalen could feel the power rising within him. This was the true test, where his strength would be pushed to its limits. The earth trembled as the forces of light and shadow collided. Jalen fought with all his might, the crystal heart glowing fiercely as it absorbed the dark magic, turning the tide of battle. In the heart of the storm, Jalen confronted the true source of the darkness, an ancient being whose power rivaled that of the gods. With the crystal heart at his side, Jalen knew this battle would determine the fate of the realms. Jalen knew that he could not fight alone. With the guardians by his side, the crystal heart became a beacon of hope, uniting the realms in a final act of defiance against the darkness. The light from the crystal heart engulfed the ancient being, disintegrating the darkness once and for all. The earth shook with the release of energy, and the realms were free from the grip of evil. With the darkness defeated, the world began to heal. The sun rose higher in the sky, bringing warmth and life to the lands. Jalen, now a true guardian, stood at the helm of a new era of peace. The world was on the brink of chaos as the dark forces rallied. Jalen stood with the guardians at the edge of the sacred grounds, their eyes fixed on the horizon. The storm that loomed would test them all. With the first lightning strike, the battle was upon them. Jalen raised the crystal heart high, calling on the allies he had gained throughout his journey, warriors from distant lands, wise elders, and those who believed in the light. The time for unity had come. The forces of darkness collided with the light in an epic clash. The world trembled as the shadows of the past rose to strike once more. Jalen fought fiercely, his sword an extension of his will, and with every swing, the darkness recoiled. In the heart of the battle, Jalen faced the most terrifying force yet, the Shadow King's Dark Herald. With an unearthly scream, it surged forward, engulfing the battlefield in pure darkness. Jalen felt himself being pulled toward its core, his strength faltering. As the darkness threatened to swallow him whole, Jalen made a choice. He would sacrifice his connection to the crystal heart to seal the darkness forever. With a final resolute breath, he plunged his hand into the heart of the darkness, channeling its energy into the light. With a mighty roar, the darkness was sealed. The energy of the crystal heart flowed into the earth, creating a barrier that would protect the realms for all time. But as the light dimmed, Jalen collapsed, the burden of the sacrifice weighing heavily on him. When Jalen awoke, the world was forever changed. The skies were clear, and the sun rose higher than ever before. The darkness had been vanquished, and the realms had been saved, but the cost had been great. Jalen knew the world would remember him as the one who had saved them all. Jalen returned to the village where his journey had begun. The people celebrated his triumph, but Jalen knew the true victory was in the peace that now reigned. The Starbear's spirit had guided him, and in his heart, he knew the legacy of the Starbear would live on for generations to come.